Brilliant. So I feel like it's a good time to start. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us, whether it's in your lunch break or wherever, welcome. I'm Chloe Myneck. I'm an artist, researcher, co-designer and queer community builder. I'm currently a My World Research Fellow based at the studio, and I'm looking into community engagement and participation. I'm really excited for this talk. I went to Bethany and Layla's workshop on their project, and I thought it was a great opportunity to share their research and their process. I'm super passionate about how we include people as they are and how to make people feel comfortable and deliver spaces online and in real life that meet people's needs. So a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, there's a Q&A function, or put it on the message chat. This session is going to be recorded, and we'll put it on YouTube afterwards, so you could send it around to people you think would be interested. If you need captions, there's a small button on the bottom that says CC and show captions. And if you have any technical issues, if you just put it on the message chat, the studio will help us with those technical bits. As a queer community builder, I co-run Bristol Butch Bar and Queer Death Cafe, and I often use craft to help people chat about things. I'll be the facilitator of this discussion. First off, we were thinking of introducing ourselves using like 5 bits of language. Hi, I'm Chloe. My pronouns are she, her. I describe myself as a scruffy queerdo, rebel dyke, curious question asker, awkward fish, and neurospicy. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves with 5 bits of language?
I'm happy to go next.
Yeah.
Of course. Hello, everyone. Though I can't see you, thank you so much for being here. Or, of course, thank you so much, Chloe, for facilitating this. Super cool. Okay, so in terms of when Chloe said this, I had something of an ego death in terms of what do I say. So I wrote it down. So in terms of 5 bits, I put Bristolian. You'll find out this project is a lot about the Southwest, so that became quite valuable. I've got to say my pronouns are they, them. What else did I put? That I'm a writer, that I'm a neurodivergent creative, and I do see those 2 words in tandem with each other, which I think is a vision I think hopefully you'll be able to see through the project in terms of disability arts and creativity. I am a cat lover. I have a lovely cat called Bilbo. I'm afraid he can't be here today. And I am a Muppet fan. I love the Muppets. So those are my 5 things.
Thanks, Bethany. How about you, Layla?
I love the Muppet fan one. Fantastic. Hi everyone, I'm Layla. My pronouns are they, them. The language that I would use to describe myself, I actually didn't pre-plan this because I knew that I would think about it too much. I just thought I'd just see what would come out on the spot. So creative, sleepy, inquisitive, queer, and the final one, can I say sleepy times 2?
Sure.
I think double sleepy. I'm a very sleepy bean. That's how I describe myself.
Thank you. How about you, Stuart?
Thanks, Chloe. So, hi everybody. My name is Stuart Reed. My pronouns are he, him. And to describe myself, I guess I'm a disabled activist. I'm a writer. I'm a researcher. I am a curious person, I think. And say a little bit more about me, I like all things animation and particularly Disney. So I'm a Disney adult.
Nice, thank you. Cool. So hopefully that gives you like some idea about the speakers. And this is like an informal chat about like a creative project that's really exciting. So yeah, Stuart was gonna introduce We Are the People. So yeah, hand over to you, Stuart.
Back to me again. Yes. So We Are the People, of which the work today is part of, is a large 5-year project. So we're about sort of almost getting on for 3 years into the project now. And it's a project from something called the Wellcome Trust. And it's a substantial project looking to explore all things to do with disability rights and practice within the Southwest. So we're really trying to understand what issues matter for disabled people and allies in the Southwest, with the purposes of bringing people together for the purposes of change. And so within our project, we have we will have a total of 9 different strands that we're focusing on. And what we're talking about today is just one of these strands, is the LGBTQI issues affecting disabled people. And the 2 other strands that we're looking at the moment are disabled people's experiences with DPOs, so these are disabled people's organisations, and the third one is all things to do with disability activism and advocacy. And then, so these are the 3 that we're looking at the moment, and then we will soon be looking at our next round of themes, and then there'll be a final round in our final year. So if anybody's interested, we can share some more information about it, but it's also on the website, which is included in the chat. But we're happy to have a chat afterwards if anybody wants to know more about the project.
Brilliant.
So,
Thanks, Stuart.
thank you.
So yeah, now Bethany and Layla are gonna chat about Make Room, their project. Bethany, if you just like present the PowerPoint. Yeah, because at the minute I can see all the bits. But yeah, brilliant. I'll hand over to you.
Okay, perfect. I think I am sharing the presentation, so hopefully you can see it. And I apologize for the clunky, can you see what I can see kind of cycle. But yeah,
we can't see the presentation.
You not? I'm very sorry.
It's still in like the sort of PowerPoint mode. But I can't see it anyway. Maybe somebody else can.
Oh, let's see. What can people see? Oh, other people are saying they can.
Oh, weird. Okay. Carry on.
So I'm sorry about that, but okay, if you can see, I will put it on full screen again soon.
Yeah,
Bethany,
sorry. If you just put it in full presentation mode, you know that little button.
Oh yeah.
Bottom right.
There we go. Okay, so it is on the What is the Make Room slide, and I think it is over to Layla to introduce that.
Absolutely. If you want to just make it a little bit bigger though, Bethany, it's still the smaller version. So if you go to slideshow and then present from current slide at the top.
Oh, okay. Sorry about this.
That's all right.
How does that look? It's full screen for me, but
it's still not for me.
Oh dear. Maybe we could always switch between it. So maybe
do you want me to give it a go?
Do you want to have a go on your own? Maybe
yeah.
Mine's being funny. This is the joys of online conferencing, right? I'm going to stop sharing.
Let's see if it works.
Yay, okay, sorry about that. I'm going to stop talking and sorry for
that. I think that was just a weird technical hitch there. No worries. Yeah, so the Make Room project, I'll introduce myself a bit more clearly as well, because I feel like I just told you that I was sleepy. So yeah, I've been working as a community research fellow on this project, which is hosted by Bath Uni, and funded by the Wellcome Trust. And I've been working closely with Bethany and we've created this project called Make Room. So it was a 6-month project starting from October up until March. We finish this role very soon, very shortly. And yes, a partnership with myself and Bethany, myself as somebody who doesn't have an academic background, and that was intentional to pull people in that don't have an academic background. And we decided to run creative conversation workshops by and for LGBTQ plus disabled people in the Southwest. So both myself and Bethany are disabled and LGBTQ plus. So that is what the project's been about. We sort of come up with that and hosted that project and run some workshops, and we'll tell you all about that. So we did a lot of talking at the beginning, myself and Bethany, about our approach to the research and how we wanted it to pan out. So the lived experience part of it, I think, is central to all of this. Every decision that we've made has been informed by the fact that we have lived experience in this area. And other things that were important to us, of which there were many, but just here's some key ones, was that we incorporated community care, that we honoured our queerness, that we considered various models of disability. So you might have heard of, well, I'm sure you've heard of the social model disability, and making sure that we incorporate that. So trying to remove as many barriers as possible for people to take part in the project. We were inspired by crip theory, and that's informed a lot of the decisions that we've made as well. And creative practice. Both Bethany and myself are creative people in our own rights, and have backgrounds with creativity in work as well. So yeah, all of that informed what the project ended up looking like and what we ended up doing. My background before this role, and now as well, is in creative therapeutic practice. That's what I studied at uni. So it's not therapy, but it's using creativity as a means to have a therapeutic benefit. And I've also come from a background of training in the disability field as well. So there's that sort of, both of those areas have been really relevant to the project. And yeah, we were really excited to use art as a research tool, because this is from Daisy Fancourt, who is like my idol in the creative arts therapy world. The arts can have an impact across social inequalities, which makes them a powerful tool in reaching mixed demographics and minority groups. There's a picture on the screen here that's just an image from a workshop that I've done previously for this role. Yes, we really wanted to champion the fact that creativity can be used in a way to make research more accessible for the people taking part in it. And yeah, it can sort of give a more depth to the research outcomes. Well, that's what we think anyway, so that's why we've done it. So we really want to consider the fact that coming from a university, that sometimes research historically, there's been a long history of research that exploits us as marginalised populations with the goal of producing knowledge that benefits the researcher, while far too often being at best irrelevant or at worst actively harmful to members of the populations themselves. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't just asking things of people, this demographic being disabled, LGBTQIA plus people, that we're not just asking lots of things about them, loads of personal questions, and trying to just drag things out of them without considering how that might impact them, or the space that we can create so that it's something beneficial for them as well. So that was like one of the main tenets that Bethany and I held on to throughout this project. So we want to do research as collaboration, research as connection, research as a creative platform, and research as conversation, rather than just extracting and treating people, maybe in a way that make them feel like just a number. So yeah, that was really important to us throughout this. Something before we go into the findings of the research, which Bethany's going to do, we wanted to note how unique it is, I guess, to be in a position of, or for me, it's been you know, a unique position of researching my community. So like a lot of the experiences that people are bringing to the table are experiences that I face and that my group of friends face. So with that, I think comes a lot of access needs and considerations for projects like this, in terms of employing disabled LGBTQIA plus people, or anybody who comes from a lived experience background, and things that need to be considered to make the role more accessible for them, so more accessible for people like me and Bethany. So through our research, we found the great work of so many different organisations providing access riders, and a lot of easy to create access riders. So yeah, providing an access rider at the start of a project like this for employees or for community fellows, I think is really important. Providing scaffolding, accessibility scaffolding. So that could look like providing a designated and trained access lead to support the workload, and to give sort of a jargon busting different perspective on like a lot of the academic elements. I think there's a need for accessible research training, including how to take care of yourself as a lived experience researcher. So wellbeing practices, and maybe that could be signposting as well. That's considering the fact that the lived experience load and crip time as well, as disabled people, that yeah, things might take us longer as people that are researching their own communities. Ensuring that there is significant and relevant lived experience across the team. So for us, you know, we're working within Bath University. So whatever organisation that is with, whether it's like with Chloe with the studio, ensuring that there is lived experience within the team as well that you can relate to and bounce off of. We found that really helpful. Considering realistic deadlines, a lot of research projects are very like intense and have very tight deadlines. So considering those being realistic and having flexibility and crip time as well. So that also might look like flexible working hours, and considering necessary training for the role too. Yeah, those are some of the key things that came up in terms of our experiences in making this accessible. We also partnered with 2 organisations, Talk to the Rainbow and Reframe Talking Therapies. We want to make sure that the workshops that we ran, there was somebody available who could support participants in the research if they needed it, because we're obviously asking people to talk about sensitive subjects and things that affect them. So we had, yeah, a great team with us, working with us and being present on the workshop days. We held 2 in-person workshops, one in Bath and one in Bristol, to support people if they needed it. That felt very important to us. So I'm going to hand over to Bethany now.
Of course. Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Layla, for all of that like brilliant points. And yeah, I learned so much in terms of creative therapeutic practice. It's now like my favorite thing. I want to learn all about it because it was so cool getting to know about those things. I do realise beyond my passion for Kermit the Frog, in terms of a shorter introduction on my part, in terms of Bath University, I am a lecturer in media communications, but this was my first role in a research group, which was quite new and exciting to me. And it was also, even though I've done a lot of self-advocacy work, it was very DIY in terms of like zine making. So this was the first time where I was thinking about what does it mean to be in a sort of quote unquote professional role when you're actually thinking about that lived experience, which is definitely new. But I should also say the other thing I'm going to say is if you were looking at those gorgeous blobs and you love them as much as I do, I did put on the chat, but just to say out loud, they were created by Sapphire Henriksen, who is an amazing artist and arts engagement coordinator now at BuzzBar. And they helped not only design our wonderful, colourful logo, but these gorgeous blobs, which you'll see popping up throughout the presentation, because we wanted to have a bit of a scaffolding in terms of how do we create a voice for some subjects which it can be quite hard to talk about. So, which me and Sapphire nicknamed these kind of cute little guys. So again, thinking about how can things be playful without being childish? How can things be warm and accessible without being, too, condescending or anything? So that was another really fun element. But in terms of the survey, so in terms of getting those inputs first off. I should say this was small scale. So this isn't, you know, one of those grand, we've interviewed 20,000 people or something. We're mostly focusing on the workshop participants in Bath and Bristol. But one thing which was really cool was we emailed a lot of different organisations all across the Southwest. So very tip of Cornwall, Plymouth, Wiltshire, wherever you can think of. And we got responses all the way through. And that really helped increase the reach and understand that unique challenges in regards to accessibility, which we wouldn't have been able to perhaps fully engage with in the time frame. That's not to say we don't want to do that in the future, but it does really show in terms of future research. In terms of the survey, it was pretty simple. The first section was your experiences of LGBTQIA+ accessibility. When I say that, our group was guided by a working group of people of lived experience. And so the thing that they fed back to us in terms of what would you want a research project about that intersection between disability and LGBTQI identity, they said, we want to think about accessible venues in terms of LGBTQ+ venues. So that was why we really wanted to really think about that. And that's why our name quite playfully was Make Room. So the focus, so on one was very much the focus on that, where we learn about everything from people's experiences in Cornwall to Plymouth to Wiltshire, loads of different places, and our creative workshops. So thinking about how can we use creative methods in a way that's accessible, engaging. It isn't just us thinking, oh, we think this will be cool. So really thinking about what people want to see. Of accessibility, very much a mix of open and closed questions. So in the sense that people could just tick if they wanted to, but there was that room to share people's voice. And some of those free text questions were so impactful, and I am so excited to share with you the final report. It's taken a lot of wrangling because like so much of the answers were so good, but it felt very important to have this in people's own words. And it was available online, and as you can see, there is a photo on the right of the Easy Read survey. And that is an example of Easy Read is a way of communicating in a way that's more accessible, using clear images and language, providing that in print. So again, think about these different entry points. And our photographs are either from Diego or from Gabriella. So we're very lucky to have these photographs. So all the credits are by those photographers if you want to look into their work. Okay, this is quite a simple one. So all across the Southwest, I like to keep questions simple. So one was just, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank accessibility in LGBTQIA+ venues across the Southwest? And nice and simple, but honestly, I think this was our most interesting question. And it was slap bang in the middle at number 5. So definitely room for growth, but not to say there isn't good work being done already. And if we're thinking about that, it went as low as the number 1. And that, interestingly, was rural Cornwall. So, you know, and there was only one that was 10, but that was in Bristol. So again, we can think about these different experiences across this whole region. It's as diverse as, you know, experiences of disability or LGBTQ+ identity itself, really. And those free text answers in terms of those different challenges explored so many different things. So I'm really excited when I can share the report with you as well. Okay, I got very into my mood mapping because I was really thinking about how can I communicate these themes in a way that is not one of those kind of JSTOR homework articles. So I made lots of mind maps, and I was thinking a lot about different people's quotes. So in terms of those key themes of the survey, all different answers it took me just to read them because people had a lot to say, and so should they, because I think they were feeling like no one's asked me this before. So in terms of key themes, real focus in terms of different experiences in the Southwest, that, you know, it's not just Bristol, right? I know I said I'm a Bristolian, but there's more to the Southwest of England than that, right? So real considering what it means in terms of this lack of events outside of the big cities. And I hate to say it, but the most reoccurring word in the surveys and even in the workshops was afterthought. Accessibility as an afterthought, inclusion as an afterthought. I hate to say that was the big A word that kept coming up. So really thinking about some of, and I'll share in the next slide some of these tips where it can be more embedded. And of course, also reflecting on the relationship between those different two identities, as well as things such as nightlife. You might have seen there's a really, really cool advert going around right now in terms of challenging perceptions in terms of nightlife. and inclusion and assumptions in regards to disability. So it wasn't just saying, oh, we don't want nightlife, because some people were saying, why do you assume that disabled people don't go out at night? Why is the daytime event successful and the evening ones are not? So it's not universal. Really, I think people were asking for is simply just more. And one quote that really stood out to me amongst, gosh, so many, my report is long because everything is so good, is again that notion of accessibility as an afterthought, the sense that it's not just about being nice, you've got to be, thinking about actual actions. And I was really struck by this one, which said, people always say welcome to all without doing the work on what would make us welcome. And really it's thinking about what are those actions. And I should say, in terms of some of those actions, if that is helpful to you, it is things, they are simple. They are so simple. It's things like providing information in advance. That was a really recurring one throughout all of our workshops. It was having a host to meet. What does it mean if you don't know anyone in your community? You don't want to have that cycle of loneliness. Do you know what I mean? Quiet spaces and considering sensory needs. So really thinking about how can that be embedded in the planning. Of course, thinking about cognitive processing, the fact that COVID is not over, thinking about those questions of access. And finally, one that again was just thinking about, is your building accessible? And all of these things are things that can be provided in advance. So just thinking about having something all in one place, saying just to say we do have a quiet space, you can meet someone. It's just really that, just considering that, how it doesn't become an afterthought. So in terms of the Bath workshops, and this was facilitated by the amazing Sapphire, who has arts events on at Bath Spa, which is super cool, so you should go to them. They helped with making badges. These badges are so cool. So this is a photograph on the left, and it's a pair of open hands holding two badges. One says access is a right, and one says rolling rainbow. And of course, badges, patches, all of these things, such an amazing history on activism. And we were doing all kinds of things facilitated by Sapphire, such as badge making, collages, drawing spaces. What does your ideal quiet space look like? Can you draw it? What if money was no option? And people were going, oh, could I have a ball pit? I was like, why not? And of course, Sapphire's amazing blobs. And in terms of those key themes, again, mine mapped in bright pink, Mr. Blobby pink, I call it, is thinking about, again, those top tips, same as the survey, need for quiet spaces and information in advance, the importance of that easy read format that we created. So again, not having that as an afterthought, the fact we already had that and they were like, yes, you've got this is a good thing. One really cool thing that I learned about from one of the participants was something called the cycle of inaccessibility by a content, like an Instagram activist person called Pixie P, which is this idea of how inaccessibility becomes a cycle and it makes people like invisible and you're not seen, and it becomes this idea of, oh, there are not, there is not that intersection between disability and LGBTQ plus experience, when all the survey responses was like, my experiences are so similar, not so similar, like so in conversation with each other. So that was really cool. I learned so much from all the participants, including Chloe, of course, who is here today, because everyone was doing such cool organizing. So I was always like, let me write this down. And of course, ethics of disclosure. One thing that was really important to me was that we weren't like, like sort of forcing people to justify their identity to get in the door, because that felt kind of messed up and intrusive. So actually, and people were quite surprised by this, with the survey when I designed it with sign-up sheets, I wasn't like, do you identify as disabled? Because there's some people who experience things that are disabling but do not identify as disabled. Or do you identify, like, where do you identify? Because, these things are in process. So it was really important, like, that our question was literally just, do you feel impacted by accessibility in like Southwest in terms of LGBTQ plus venues? Because that was our question. So really thinking about it like that. And it was quite cool to see people say like, oh, I thought that was a positive thing, because I was like, am I being really weird by saying I don't think we need this? So that was really interesting in terms of really thinking about those demographic things and trust, because trust I think should be earned rather than being like, tell me your medical information, which would be quite violating and even traumatic. But cool, so that was the Bath one. and the Bristol one. So the photo on the left, apart from the fact that it is my elbow, is loads of paper all on a table with lots of colourful felt tips. And this was a group making blob activity. So we made the blobs even bigger this time. And basically we were thinking, and we were facilitating, we were working with a different workshop facilitator, not because Sapphire was not amazing, but because we wanted to work with people based in the different spaces. So we wanted to work with a Bristol-based creative person. And that was Bridie, who, like Layla, is trained in creative therapeutic practice. And one thing we were talking about with the Bath one, it was super great, but we were thinking, oh, it's quite one-to-one interviews or smaller conversations. We wanted everyone to share because everyone had such amazing organizing experience. So really thinking about how could the Bristol one be more based on dialogue and group activities, which is why we made this great big blob with different prompts, such as, what does accessibility mean to you, all of these kind of things, and some of it was humorous, some of it was playful, but I do hate to say it, the afterthought word was written again. And on the right, we have another pink mind map, because I'm obviously a fiend for a pink mind map in terms of key themes. A lot of it was very material in terms of things that were really impacting people in terms of safety, in terms of politics, in terms of culture wars, in terms of incidents such as hate crimes. So there was a real sense in terms of what does it mean to be safe in Bristol. Once again, that relationship between LGBTQ+ and QIA+ and disabled identity. So again, thinking about what does that mean? Some people feeling like, oh, I can be this on one day and this on one day. So really thinking about people being able to be their full self when spaces are accessible. One thing, because I feel like people are thinking, oh, it happens to be art, but the main focus is on disability and LGBTQ+ experience. But as me and Layla, we are creative people, we felt like, no, this is a big thing apart. It's not coincidental. It's not, a mere, garnish on the subject. We thought it was a really key part, that idea of creativity as a method. And so much of, when I asked people, why did you come? So much of it, a lot was about, there's things I want to share, but it was also, I like art. I want to do something creative. People were talking about that in regards to what it means to have creativity without competition. How can be community building rather than oh, I need to put this on Instagram to show that I'm doing something impressive. And that there was people were talking about that a lot in terms of pressure, in terms of productivity, kind of hypercapitalism, all of things which I think are really valuable when we think about disability lived experience, LGBTQ+ lived experience, especially when with safety, people were talking a lot about how they're feeling things like pink washing, where things might appear inclusive, but they aren't. So it felt like art was a real truth teller in that. Okay, future ideas, my goodness. I feel like part of my neurodivergent brain, I was like, oh, I want to do everything. And obviously 6 months, you cannot do everything. But there are so many wonderful ideas. And I want to emphasize that so much of this comes from the working group who initially said we want it to be about accessible venues. It comes from all the amazing participants who had so much knowledge and insights who I want to keep working with, including Chloe. So the obvious one is we only got to Bristol and Bath, and obviously it would be a bit silly if we're saying that's the whole of the Southwest, because obviously our survey was so much more than that. We had some amazing answers from Plymouth and Cornwall, including by LGBTQIA+ led disability networks, and oh my gosh, I would love to work with them. Or I'd love to be able to say maybe them liaise with Sapphire with those art workshops and say, there's all this material, would you like to do a workshop? We'd love to see what you do with it, because we don't see ourselves as having ownership over these things, because that would be really weird. And we also, in the survey and just chats, participants shared more creative activities they like to do. Funnily enough, ceramics came across as number one. So, that sounds quite cool. And also Sapphire Henriksen himself actually happens to be very experienced in that area. So I'd love to do some kind of ceramics thing. And creative writing, I'm a writer, so I love that idea as well. And of course, there was an element in the survey where people were listing like, these are the venues which need to do better and need to do more. And I'm really keen to be sharing their key insights from our report, maybe even in like really accessible things like a poster with them to, again, because like I say, that model of accessibility is an afterthought that can be challenged with such direct actionable steps. So much from the survey was saying like, yeah, just provide the information in advance, or just be honest, saying like something cannot be fully accessible, but please just be honest if it's not. So yeah, so many different things, but I'll hand over to Layla for some more.
Thanks, Bethany. I'm unmuted. Great. So yeah, like Bethany said, we had a lot of ideas. We made a giant report at the beginning that I'd kind of forgotten about until like sort of wrapping up now, that had all the different things that we were dreaming about doing with this project. So there's a lot of different directions we could go with. So one of the things that we wanted to do as well was host an exhibition or event. So hosting more of these workshops and collating the artwork that people make, maybe leaving it more free form. The blobs worked absolutely amazingly for this kind of research, and I'm really glad that we used them. But we could also open it to be a bit more free form in terms of what people do creatively, and then hosting a sort of exhibition or event. And that could be a combination of highlighting local disabled and LGBTQIA plus artists and the findings from the sort of research that we've been doing, building connections with local communities, and honouring co-production. So one of the key outputs, goals for this project, because this is a pilot project, I don't think I said that at the beginning, this is the first time that this one's been done, is to create an environment where co-production is possible with this sort of work, and explore how that works from a sort of university setting. So having some time to sort of build connections, lasting connections with local community members. We thought about creating practical guidance, such as maybe toolkits and training materials, something that we could provide. We could not just to LGBTQ plus venues, but also to just event organisers. So people like Chloe, who run the Queer Deaf Cafe, or Butch Bar, to provide them something tangible that they can use to ensure that their events are as accessible as possible. And to champion existing knowledge and expertise. So a lot of this stuff that me and Bethany have brought to the table with our like very creative background, and like varied work experiences, nothing that we've come up with is like brand new. Like this knowledge exists in the community, especially the sort of creative aspect in terms of disabled communities and LGBTQ plus communities. A lot of that knowledge is already there. So using the platform of coming from the perspective of a university to signpost and to celebrate the organizations that are already doing that work. So those are the things that we would like to do in the future. I think that's our final slide. Yeah, it is. And I think somehow 2 neurodivergent presenters have managed to finish on time. So I think we've got time for questions now, but I'll hand back to Chloe.
Thank you both. Yeah, so now it's time for questions. If you have any, if you put them in the Q&A function. I have some already prepared. I mean, Jen, so why do you think this work is so important? Because I think it's really important, but I'd love to hear your point of view on why you think it's really important.
I'm happy to go first and then see if Bethany wants to add anything to it. I think I've been shouting at the rooftops about this long before this job started in September, October, the importance of lived experience perspectives when we're doing research, when we're creating policies, when we're doing anything that involves a community that is marginalized. The voices of people who experience those things have to be at the forefront, and to be able to host those conversations and to facilitate those spaces as queer disabled people, I think is just so important, because there's a nuance and a level of understanding and lived experience that is just, I think it adds another layer to how deep you can go with the research and what you find out, because of that trust element, because of that, you know, just the way that people can open up, I think, more in spaces where they know that they are with their kinfolk, creates an environment where people are gonna, I think, open up more and maybe feel more comfortable to tap into different ideas and into their creativity. And then creativity as well as a tool, I think, is super important in this. And like Bethany said, it's not just like, oh, let's be kooky and just do art for fun. It's like really considered, and we know from our own experiences. And I know from my creative therapeutic practice background just how powerful art is, and in terms of not only people being able to open up more to other people, but being able to connect in with themselves and their own experiences. So yeah, I think it's very important that that sort of creativity and lived experience element are like in partnership with each other, and that more opportunities like this are given to people like me who don't have an academic or research background and that have come into this, to be given this opportunity. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Bethany.
No, I feel like you answered all of that so well, and thank you for all those kind comments, in terms of, and thank you for being here. I can see that somebody asked to see the access tips slide again. I should also say I didn't realize Sapphire was on this talk, so I was talking about Sapphire and I didn't realize they were there. But just to say, in terms of thank you to, there's a lot of people who are actually in the attendees who helped make this possible, such as Theo and Ben and Lulu and Hazel and of course Sapphire. So I just wanted to say I didn't realize everyone was there because I was just like blah blah blah. So I just wanted to say thank you for that as well.
Bethany, did you have any thoughts of why this work is important to you?
Oh, right, yes. I think for me, I think sometimes it is just, I feel like it's important for so many different reasons. In terms of, I feel like the community fellow model has been so valuable in terms of being able to work with Layla and really question that idea about what research is. Because for so long, to be honest, I kind of thought like, for me, my own positionality was something that I kind of put in the cupboards and left, and it wasn't something that you should talk about in work, where it was like maybe even a bit of an inconvenience, because disabled academic work can be disabling. So like the idea of what does it mean to put these experiences front and center and do it in a way which is actually centered on themes such as community building and challenging loneliness, things which are not necessarily seen as quantifiable on one's CV. And I realized that was something that made it so important. And I think the fact, like with the report, I feel like I see it as like this patchwork of voices, and maybe some people who like they don't always, again echoing what Lila was saying about that value of lived experience, that idea that maybe these things have gone unheard simply because nobody has asked. So it was so important for me to focus it in terms of it being like this patchwork quilt of voices, and to be able to facilitate that was really cool. And like I say, in terms of those actionable steps for accessibility, I felt like so much of it, I was realizing people were saying the same things. And I bet one thing I always say when it's challenging, like when experiences are challenging, people say, oh, well, we've never heard of anyone saying this. And it's like, these conversations are happening. It's just sometimes they're not heard, or they're happening in spaces that are not necessarily academic, or they're not being archived. So the idea of saying that actually, no, these conversations are happening. It's just how do we actually share them in a way that obviously is collaborative and like non-intrusive. So I don't know, I think that's kind of what made it special.
Can I also jump in and Yeah. So I'm just thinking, one thing I forgot to say, or didn't really say in sufficient detail at the very beginning, was around what the community research fellow model actually is. So I'll come on to that in just a moment. But just like in terms of what this, why queer disabled voices are so important to me, is that actually, many of us who identify as disabled and queer probably don't know, really anyone, certainly a significant number of disabled queer folk. And so for me, one of the real specialties of this strand was actually just having the space where, as much like Layla and Bethany were saying, the opportunity for disabled queer individuals to actually meet people who are like them. So I remember when I was at the Bristol event, why it was so profound to me was that I'd literally never been in a space with so many disabled queer individuals before. And I don't know when or if at all that will happen again. But that to me was one of the most profound and profoundly meaningful experiences that I've encountered as a queer disabled person. So we often forget just how important, having these sessions can be. I think just for representation and for being in a space where it doesn't feel so isolating and alone, really. But just wanted to kind of echo what I said at the beginning. It was around the community research fellow. So apologies that I kind of glossed over this. I didn't. I think I probably did not really discuss it in the way that I should have done. But the beauty of our Welcome project is that every single strand that we're working on, so obviously, as I was saying previously, the LGBT strand is one such example. The ethos of our Welcome project is we're trying to move away from the traditional academic model of research being done on disabled people, and actually to instead focus it very much on it being led by disabled people. So every strand that we have a community research fellow, somebody who might not necessarily have academic experience, and obviously that's our dear Layla, who is our community research fellow for this strand, and we also have an internal research fellow, somebody with some academic experience who can then help collaborate and develop the project into some form of research. And obviously that's what Bethany's role is as well. And every strand is led by another member of the We Are the People team, which is Ben for this strand, who's here with us as well. But when Bethany was talking about all the people that are involved in this project, it's a very big project. So there's lots of people in and around, but I just wanted to kind of echo that process, because this is a model that hasn't really happened before, so we kind of really wanted to see what it was going to be like, and that's why Layla was saying previously how it is very much a pilot stage, because we don't know how it's going to really materialize. And it was, for me, it was an incredibly meaningful and profound way of doing research. So thank you. I will mute myself.
Thank you, Stuart. And I guess just like some reflection, because we're always it's always seen as two different intersections, queerness and disability, but we all know that it's very crossed over. And I guess looking back, I like looking at like queer history, and that we've always kind of clubbed together to get different rights. And I feel like there needs to be more crossover and like more working together. Pride events, for example, aren't that accessible. What do you hope the impact of this research would be? Like your findings, what's the dream?
I'm happy to go first again, if that's all right. So I think going back to it kind of links back to what we were saying about what we would like to do in the future, which is a lot. We both have a lot of ideas, but I think it's already had an impact in the sense that a lot of people that have attended the workshops have been, which apparently isn't always super common in research, have been getting in contact with me like, what's next, like we want to continue this conversation on. So there is a thirst, there's a hunger for it, and people are ready to have these conversations to figure out how we can make them into tangible change for people. And there's a lot of community knowledge already, like we said before. me and Bethany are not reinventing the wheel here. Like, queer disabled people have been incredible experts at making their, like you were saying, getting their rights and making their communities better for themselves forever. So it's just like all we're doing is platforming that. That's all we're doing here. That work is already being done. So yeah, I think all of those future ideas that we listed, and in showcasing all of that work that's already being done, and yeah, continuing on the momentum of what we've started here, and yeah, it's been like a very energetic, like enthusiastic response to the project. Like, cannot emphasize that enough. So yeah, we just want to just keep going with it.
Thanks. Bethany, any thoughts?
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of echoing some of the stuff I said already, that even though this project has been guided by our own lived experience, it goes so far beyond us. It's involved so much collaboration, both in terms of some of the people who are in the audience right now, but also in terms of the workshops, how that's developed, how that's grown. And of course, because like in terms of experiences, whether that is disability or LGBTQIA identity, even if you're coming from one position of lived experience, of course, it's not going to be able to capture the full experience. Even me saying, me being a Bristolian isn't going to capture the whole of the Southwest. So it's so important to emphasize continuing that sustainable kind of collaboration. And like, if anyone wanted to run a kind of make room style workshop on accessibility in the Southwest, like we wouldn't actually have to, be there to make it happen. We don't see it as an ownership thing. So it could be kind of cool to be a bit of a toolkit. A lot of my experience in terms of disability and queer experience is coming from zines, which is very like DIY, just like pop up and, you do one and you post it and someone else does something. So I kind of see it as maybe a bigger chain, because obviously, like even like for me, I can get quite fatigued. So like the idea, I probably may not be able to travel down to the tip of Penzance in one day, but I'm sure there are cool communities. And I also do think like it's important to talk about one elephant in the room, which is money and funding, which came from surveys. And I like the idea of academic work being able to fund and materially support these organizations, which often have so much emotional and physical labor and planning, because so much of the feedback from the survey was like, oh, the community stuff is really, really accessible and is run by people who are of that lived experience, but everyone burns out. So like, and they do it for free and they're exhausted. So I like the idea of how can we actually materially support people to have what they want. That's not me saying, you have to do what we did with blobs and my Snorlax toy or whatever. It might be like, oh yeah, some other people want to do this. How can we help also like financially support that? Because with research applications and stuff, I kind of just wanted to be able to like get more people like paid, to be honest, because so much of disability work, so much of LGBTQ plus work is unpaid labor. So thinking about for it to be sustainable and not one thing, which is like emotionally draining, I'm thinking like those kind of things as well in terms of that financial support. I think that's really important. In terms of findings, like I say, just thinking about those really actionable points in terms, like just like providing that event information in advance. There's things like quiet spaces. There's things like great organizations people could partner with, like Talk to the Rainbow and Reframe Talking Therapies. So just really thinking about that guidance. And I should say, like with the report, it was really important to me. Like there were a lot of just like tips and resources, that it wasn't purely like negative. It was like, actually no, people like have so many solutions to this, and all you need to do is listen, which often is not always the case, that people don't always ask or document these things.
Awesome. Thank you very much. There's a last couple of minutes. No one's asked any questions yet. I've got more. I guess like for me and like working with, I collaborate a lot with universities, and as universities kind of move into more of a civic role, so because they own a lot of the buildings in lots of our cities, and like how they do research with community groups is really important. And I was just wondering whether you could talk a little bit about your research methods, you know, that kind of non-extractive kind of method, the fact that when I went to one of your workshops, I was allowed to craft whatever I wanted to craft. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I don't want to keep on going first if anyone's got a more burning response, but I think, to be honest with you, that didn't really require a lot of like specific planning on my part. That kind of came naturally, I think, because of my background in terms of the way that I wanted to approach it, and I think also Bethany as well, and the two creative facilitators that we partnered with, Bridie and Sapphire, because we all have that lived experience and we know what it is like to be exploited in these spaces. It kind of was just like a no-brainer. Like, we didn't necessarily like sit down and think about, okay, exactly how can we make this like a non-extractive approach. It just came naturally to us and we spoke about the importance of it. But I think that is just another one of the benefits of lived experience work in this kind of field, is that unfortunately a lot of us would have had negative experiences that we can then just sort of by second nature try and make sure that we don't do that to other people. Especially, you know, I can only speak from my experience here, but from like a experience of having mental health issues and going through the mental health system, and how so much of that is just like your experience is just being sort of sucked out of you. Like, the only way I can describe it is like someone just putting like a vacuum cleaner in your brain and just wanting to get everything out of your head and then just sort of leave you with nothing afterwards. So that really, I think, that lived experience like informed the way that we approach this as well, from my perspective, and I think from Bethany's as well. But obviously I don't know how you feel about that, Bethany. Yeah, that's my response.
Thank you, Layla. We've got about a minute left, so I'm gonna wrap up. So like on the webinar chat, we've got links to We Are the People, the project, and there'll be more strands and they'll be looking for more community fellows. So if you're interested, look on that website. There's also the My World website, which is what my fellowship is funded by, and we will be looking for new fellows. So like there's opportunities to get involved in projects and work like this. And hopefully we'll somehow get the report. Can we get the report to the people that have attended this? Maybe we can provide them a link,
Yes.
which would be great, so everyone could read it if they would like to. Brilliant. Okay, well, yeah, thank you very much, Bethany, Layla, and Stuart, for your good work in this area and your enthusiasm. It's really important work, and yeah, I think it will have lots of impacts. Yeah, thank you.
I could just say one thing before
Yeah.
everyone goes. Thank you to Chloe. Chloe's didn't have to partner with us on this, and the studio didn't have to partner with us on this. If anything, this is like a sign of what happens when you start these conversations. You find people in different communities, they come forward, and Chloe's put the effort in to make this happen, so that we can reach a wider audience with this research. So thank you, Chloe, and thank you to the studio as well. This is just an example of why we need to have these conversations so we can all connect together and branch out further. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, you can get back to your whatever you were doing before.
Thank you so much, Chloe, as well. I just want to echo that, like being able to connect. And I think that does show like that value of being able to connect in terms of art and lived experience. And yeah, thank you for everyone's kind messages on the chat. And I'm excited to be able to share the report with you. And if anyone, and also I'd love to hear from all of you, because everyone is always doing cool things who pop up here. So I bet there's loads of connections as well.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Bye.